Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. This is the Tough Girl Extra podcast when we go back and speak with previous guests who we've interviewed before. So I'm delighted that we're going to be catching up with Anna Blackwell, who we first spoke to in November 2017. During that past episode, Anna shared more about her love of the great outdoors, how she got to do what she's done, as well as walking 500 miles across France and 1,000 miles across Spain. She also shares more about her tackling her first 4,000 meter mountain in North Africa, as well as trekking in Arctic Norway. So if you haven't listened to that episode, then go back first to listen to that, and that'll give you more background about Anna and her journey so far. But I'm delighted to catch up with Anna. Anna has recently gone on an incredible challenge called Kayaking the Continent. Let's hear more about it now. Hi Anna, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks for having me back.
Oh no, it's amazing. I'm so excited to hear more about Kayaking the Continent. What an incredible challenge. So we're obviously going to jump into that and find out more about what that challenge is, how it came about. But just in case people haven't listened to the first episode, do you just want to share a little bit more about you and who you are, give people a brief introduction?
Yeah, well, I can now say that I'm actually a professional adventurer. I do this full-time somehow. So over the last 5 or 6 years, I've basically done my best to dedicate my life to adventure. I've really got this thing about pushing myself, particularly in the outdoors. So as Sarah said, I've walked 500 miles across Spain, get the right country. The following year, I walked 1,000 miles across France and Spain. I've done a 5-week solo trek in Arctic Sweden, which was pretty epic. I've hitchhiked to Morocco and done a whole host of smaller things as well. And I do a lot of blogging. I've got a website, very active on Instagram as well. So I sort of earn my living now through writing, speaking and photography, all around my adventures.
That is so fantastic. I'm so excited for you. I think what's amazing as well is people will be able to go and learn more about sort of the journey and the steps that you've taken on the sort of first episode. But you have just completed a massive challenge. So Kayaking the Continent, I want to hear more about how did this idea come about? Where did it all start for this?
So I actually can't take credit for this whatsoever. It goes back to, well, my part in it goes back to October 2017. I was still working in a conventional job at the stage. I was working for a law firm. And on one Monday evening, a gloomy Monday evening in October, I was flicking through the website Explorers Connect, which for people who haven't come across it before, it's basically a online expedition adventure teammate finding platform. And I was more looking out of boredom. I wasn't actively looking for my next adventure. I knew that 2018 was going to be another really big one for me, big adventure wise. And I was planning on leaving my job for that. But I wasn't actively looking for something. But then this advert popped up and it just said female adventurer teammate wanted. And I was like, hey, I'm a female adventurer. So I clicked on it and there was quite a short paragraph. This female, I didn't know how old she was, but she was looking for another female to go on this kayaking expedition with her. And I was hooked straight away. And I knew that one day I wanted to go on a long distance kayaking expedition. I've got a friend who's an expedition kayaker. Her trips always looked amazing. And I knew that I wanted to do something very long distance, ideally crossing like a country or a sea or something like that. And also, I knew that I wanted, for my next big one, I wanted a charitable aim with it as well. And the thing that stood out with this trip was that it was raising money for Pancreatic Cancer Action. And there wasn't very much information about it at all. But completely on a whim, I emailed the advertiser and I said, hi, just seen your advert, looks great. I'd love to have a chat. She replied that evening to point out that the advert had been up for 3 months by this stage. And during that time, she'd had responses from over 80 women across the world. And Kate, who was the advertiser, had narrowed it down to 2 women, and she was going to be letting them know which one was the successful applicant the following day. So I had literally just got in there in the nick of time. But Kate said, send me a bit about yourself, expedition kayaking experience. And if you send that this evening, I can, have a think about it. So I did straight away. I was like, oh my God, okay, pressure was on. So I fired off an email and she emailed back very quickly. And all it said was, this is going to sound really strange, but did you go to Headington School? And that is where I went to school. And we then discovered that Kate had also gone to Headington. She'd been 5 years below me at school. And bizarrely, we were both still living in Oxford, just a couple of miles apart from each other. So out of the 80 plus women from across the world who applied to this advert, I was the last person to pop up just a couple of miles away. So we took that as a good sign and arranged to have a chat on the phone the following evening. And we hit it off instantly, like conversation dissolved into giggle fits within 5 minutes, a theme that kind of continued throughout. And so like 24, 36 hours after I'd seen this advert, I was committed to kayaking across Europe with Kate, who at that stage was still technically a stranger that I'd met online.
Oh my God. I love like the synchronicities of how that happened, just browsing through Explorers Connect. And Explorers Connect is run by Belinda Kirk, who we have actually had on the podcast. And I have to say, I find myself going on there as well, just to browse.
It's so easy to.
Yeah, you just think, sometimes like, what jobs are available? Because I know I hate the cold, but I sometimes think, well, if I went to like Antarctica for 6 months, I'd save and made some money. I'd save a ton of money and it'd be pretty awesome. But I love how that's come together. So you actually went to the same school, yeah. So you've probably got a very, very similar way of looking at life just from the schooling side of things.
And we're both musicians, so we had played in orchestras together and things like that. There were a lot of overlaps.
Oh,
kind of quite a bizarre number.
So what was the next stage? Like, had Kate already sort of figured out sponsored? Has she got funding for this? Or was this something that you were going to be needing to do together to even get the expedition off the ground?
So basically, Kate, to give a bit of backstory to the expedition, she had come up with this idea while she was on her gap year. So she was 19 at the time, on her second gap year actually. But she had come up with this idea. She'd been in Canada looking at maps and had noticed that you could potentially cover the whole of Europe using waterways. And Kate was a rower at school, but didn't want to row it because when you row, you go backwards, and where's the fun in that? So she thought of kayaking. And she got as far as working out a route that would actually work, although we did then make some tweaks to that route. So there were some bits that were upstream for hundreds of kilometers that wouldn't work. So she got as far as working out that could do it. And that was pretty much it. So from the beginning of November, we had a lot of work to do. We decided that we wanted to leave in April 2018. So we had 6 months to finalize the route, 4,000 plus kilometers across Europe. That was quite a big time-consuming task. We had to get all of the kit and financial sponsorship in place, had to do all the training. We'd both done bits of kayaking over the years, but never really dedicated that much time to it. So we had a lot of work to do there. And also we were doing this in a tandem kayak. So we had to get used to paddling in the same boat as well. And weirdly, actually, as soon as we got into a kayak together for the first time, a few weeks even after we'd spoken on the phone, it just worked. We were just perfectly in time from that first moment, which is quite unusual. So yeah, there was a lot that needed to be done. Still, as there were definitely times in those 6 months where we didn't know whether we were really going to get to that start line. It seemed like we'd just taken on this impossible task, but we managed to just break things down to the kind of the most basic step and then just built it up. And yeah, by the time the first day actually came, we were so ready to get going. A long road.
Let's talk about the money. This is something I'm trying to do more of in 2019 because it's something that people don't talk about it enough, and it's almost like, these expeditions just come about. And so you were working, and did you continue to work until you set off on this trip, or had you stopped at that point to earn your living full time through the adventure, or did that happen after the adventure?
So by the time I met Kate, I was already working part-time at a law firm, and I was sort of topping up my income with writing and speaking already. So I was a part-time adventurer at that stage. I continued working at that law firm through until the end of February. And after that, I left. So I had March and most of April fully dedicated to kayaking, and I needed to leave by that stage because it was a full-time commitment, getting the expedition up and running. Definitely.
How long were you going to be on the road for, and how much was it going to cost, and what was your sort of budget for the whole trip?
So we originally thought it was going to take us 3.5 to 4 months. It actually took us 5 months. We had a lot of things go wrong. Budget wise, we kind of had a figure in mind, which actually was trying to work out how accurate our original one was. I know, so we got a lot of kit sponsorship. We got donated our kayak, which saved us, well, £3,000 to £5,000. We got most of our sort of kayaking gear through sponsorship. But on top of all of that stuff, we also managed to get £15,000 of financial sponsorship, which can be a lot harder to get than kit sponsorship. It was probably the worst aspect of the whole trip, because it's not fun asking people for money. Somehow it's a little bit easier asking people for equipment or specific products, but just asking companies for hard cash is just really, really grim. So we wrote over 100 letters to local companies, mainly because we both went to the same school, both, local to Oxford. We thought that was like quite a big selling point for us. Yeah, sent out loads and loads of letters, followed up with phone calls, did a lot of sort of networking and things, started going to all the big adventure and outdoors events, and we had flyers printed out that we were giving out to whoever we could, explaining that we were looking for anything that they would be able to give us. And we managed to get all of that in 4 months, because we didn't properly start until January of 2018. So that was quite a quick turnaround. We were very lucky.
That's absolutely fantastic. And I mean, getting cold, hard cash out of companies is so difficult, because companies are like, here's socks, here's trousers, which is great. But actually, sometimes when you're doing challenges like this, you actually need money.
Yeah, but we really had some wonderful sponsors, like genuinely lovely people who they almost became sort of personally invested in what we were doing. So yeah, they'd given us the money, but actually they wanted to know how we were getting on, and they wanted to have that personal connection with us, which made it a lot nicer for us.
Yeah.
We did offer things in exchange. So yeah, it's generally the way that it works with sponsorship. It wasn't just them giving us money. So we had most of our sponsors on their logos on our kayak, most of the financial sponsors. We had their logos on our website. I would write blogs for some of them, take photos of their kit in use for their exclusive use and things like that. So we kind of earned it. And obviously then I spent 5 months paddling. It's kind of earned it through that as well. But it meant, because we had this fundraising aspect to it, I think they realized that they were making that possible, making a big charitable goal possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk more about training. So what was your background in kayaking before you decided to do this trip? Was it more about getting experience, or did you want to go out and get more kayaking qualifications just for your sense of peace, of, if that makes sense, so that you feel more confident in your own kayaking abilities?
Funnily enough, actually, Kate and I, neither of us have any kayaking qualifications whatsoever. So as soon as we realised that we were committed to this, pretty much the first thing we did was find a kayaking club. We're quite well placed in Oxford in that we've got, a very accessible river, or a couple of rivers and canals and things. So we joined a club, a very, very friendly club. And we were going out a couple of times a week with the president of the club, actually. He had the most time to give to us. And actually, it wasn't so much about like developing technique or skill. We had a good basic technique, but we needed to get to a stage where we were comfortable paddling for hours and hours and hours. So really, it was about getting the hours in on the water, getting familiar with each other's paddling styles and being in a boat together. And then on top of that, we were also going to the gym 4 or 5 times a week. There was a lot of upper body strength workouts going on. Although, amusingly, I think Kate kind of overtrained a little bit. So she started this expedition absolutely hench. She won't mind me saying this because everyone was aware of it. She was really, really big when we started, like muscle wise. And she actually lost muscle throughout the expedition. She was, a little scrap by the end.
We talked about the training, we talked about the money. So let's get to the start of the expedition. Was it a relief getting to the start line?
It really, really was. A lot of people have asked if we were nervous and scared about setting off, but we were not. We were so, so ready to go. We started from Westminster Bridge in London because we wanted to start somewhere where we could get like friends and family and a bit of a crowd and really get that kind of big expedition start buzz and the kind of the hype around it. So we were up very early on that Saturday morning in April because we'd been invited to go on to BBC Radio London at like 7 a.m. or something like that. So we were outside Broadcasting House with our kayak, who's called Benji the kayak. Benji was on the car. We got like selfies with him outside Broadcasting House. We were just so, so excited and raring to go. And as soon as we got onto the water and paddled off, we were just like, yes, we're finally here. It's happening. After months and months of trading, preparing and talking about it to people and saying, yeah, 21st of April, we're heading off. It's happening. We were finally actually on the move. And we had, a crowd of friends and family. And it was the day before the London Marathon as well. So there was a great atmosphere in London. The weather was unbelievable. We had this gorgeous blue sky. It was sunny. We were there in T-shirts. And two of our good friends, or friends who have become very good friends, Spike and Alex, they paddled out of London for the first couple of days with us. We had to have support kayakers. There were sort of risk assessments and things like that we had to fill out to paddle through central London, and we had to have two friends or two people accompany us. And actually we realized that made it even more enjoyable getting to share that with other people as well. So it was fantastic. And we've got like a little video from the day. My friend's a filmmaker and he came down and filmed it and put together this video. And months later, Kate and I still watch it and get that same high from it, because it was quite surreal. Like I've watched over the years these big adventures and expeditions starting. I thought that's so cool. Like I'd love to be able to be involved in something like that. And then that was me. It was us down on that river in the kayak, looking very tiny as well. Actually, the Thames is quite big, quite busy. But no, it was great. It was one of the best days of my life, definitely.
What a perfect way to start the journey. So you're super excited, you're heading off down the Thames. Tell us a little bit more about the route, and were there certain sections which you were thinking this is going to be quite challenging? So the first thing I'd think about would be just getting out of London. I'm sure that would be fine, but then actually crossing over to Europe, so getting through the English Channel. So tell us more about. I mean, is that relatively easy to do? I've spoken to a lot of swimmers who've done it, and Sarah Uchen who's kayaked it. But I'm interested to hear it from your perspective.
Yeah, it's quite funny. Pretty much everyone assumes that crossing the English Channel was going to be the biggest challenge for us, or the toughest single day of the whole trip. To put it into context, we came out of London on the Thames, and then we paddled around the Kent coast, which took about a week and a half, I think, maybe 2 weeks. And the fantastic weather from London stayed with us for, I think, 4 or 5 days. And then it disappeared. And then we had gale force winds. We had massive waves. We had tides that seemed to always be going against us. And we had some fairly dicey sections around the Kent coast, including just a sudden fog coming out of nowhere when we were paddling around the cliffs just before Folkestone, and pretty big waves around there as well, actually. So poor visibility and big waves is not what you want when you are in a kayak without any sort of support whatsoever. There's cliffs to your right. So we had a really testing time around the Kent coast, which pushed both of us a lot. We'd done sort of open water training as part of our prep, but had all been very calm compared to that. So we reached Folkestone. We then had to wait for best part of a week for the gale force winds to die down. It was very, very stormy. And when we got the all clear from our support boat, so for a channel crossing, whether you're swimming or kayaking or paddleboarding, you have to have a registered support boat escort you across. Our support boat gave us the all clear. And it was a Friday morning, and we came out of where we were staying in Folkestone, and it was an absolutely incredible day. It was even better than the weather we had out of London. There was absolutely no wind. It was completely still, and the sea was like glassy. It was so, so flat. So people always think Channel crossing, big waves, big ships, pretty scary. It just wasn't like that for us. Kate and I are both quite laid back people. So we we came out of the harbour. There's a little beach bit, and we sort of putting our kayak along on its wheels. And we started getting ready to get into the kayak to paddle out to meet the support boat. And I remember these three guys landing on the beach in their kayaks, and they'd been out for a very early morning session, because this was all about 7:30, 8 in the morning, I think. And these three guys were like, "Oh, where are you off to today?" And Kate and I were like, we're going to France. And they're like, no, you're not. Look how chilled you are. You can't possibly be crossing the channel. Like, you're going out for the morning, going out for the day. We were like, going out for as long as it takes us to get to France. And they just couldn't believe it, because it was just another day of paddling for us. And we went out, in just t-shirts. And I remember the horizon had this kind of pink early morning haze to it. So we couldn't see France for a big chunk of the crossing, which was really magical, because when do you ever get to just paddle out into nothing? It was really, really cool. And we kind of tried to look back as little as possible, and just looked forwards out into this big vast expanse with a little rib bobbing along in front of us, the support boat sort of marking our route. But it only took about 5.5 hours, and we got you have to get onto the support boat across one of the shipping lanes. Otherwise, you get turned around when you get to France. So we had to do that. And it was all very straightforward. We both got hungry. That was pretty much the worst bit of it, was getting a bit peckish towards the end, and both needing a wee as well. Although there's a funny story around that, and wearing adult nappies. But got to France, got to Calais, landed on the beach. My dad was there with a little bottle of champagne, which we got to pop open, and we were very excited, very happy. And all these French locals were lying on the beach, because it was really gorgeous Friday afternoon, and they were sunbathing. Then we rock up in a 6.7 meter massive sea kayak, very, very excitable. They were a little bit confused by that, but I think they found it quite funny as well.
And there's a couple of things in there, but I mean, the one I'm going to have to go through straight away is adult nappies. What is going on? Talk to us about. Let's talk about bodily functions, peeing in kayaks, and adult nappies. Tell us more.
So one of the things that we had to think about with the Channel crossing was how we would go for a wee, because obviously normally if you're kayaking, you can pull up to the bank or land on a beach and hop out and go for a wee. That's not possible when you're out in the middle of the English Channel, particularly not when you have a support boat with 2 crew members, both of your mothers, and Kate's uncle was on the boat as well. It's quite a big audience if you want to try and do some sort of creative weeing. So we looked at different options. We considered using a she-wee, but that just wouldn't work in terms of gravity. So we ended up going for adult nappies. And naturally, we wanted to make sure that they would work. So a couple of weeks before we left London, we went out for a day paddle around the Isle of Wight, and we gave the adult nappies a test run. So that was quite entertaining. Not something I ever thought I would be doing at the age of 24, sitting literally my feet are probably half a foot away from where Kate was sitting. So we went for a synchronized wee, which had us in absolute fits of laughter. And the best bit was that, again, our mums were on a boat near us with one of the guys who really helped with our expedition, Ali G. The 3 of them were all on the boat, and they kept me like, "White girls, why are you laughing so much?" And obviously, if you didn't want to be like, we're going for a wee. But that was basically what was going on. We were both just sitting there literally wetting ourselves. So adult nappies.
Do you want some of the things you have to do on adventures? You've got to suck it up and just be like, I'd imagine myself if I was doing that, I'd just be screaming like, "Oh my God, I'm peeing."
That's pretty much what was happening, because Kate kind of stopped paddling, and Kate always sat in front of me. So I was like, "Kate, why have you stopped?" And she was like, "It's happening." And then she started giggling a little bit, and then I started giggling a little bit, and then I was like, "I really need to wee. I can actually let this out." And then she was like, "I'm weeing," and I was like, "Me too." one of those moments you just never ever expect to happen in life.
When did things start to, well, A, did they start to change? Like, when did it start getting really hard? When did when did you realize this was your new reality, that you're waking up and you're going to be kayaking for, I don't know, like 10 hours a day or whatever it was that you were doing? What was that like when reality suddenly hit you?
So on all the previous adventures that I've done, there's always been a moment, generally in the first couple of days, where I'm like, oh my God, what have I got myself in for? I don't remember ever having that moment when I started this trip. We so quickly fell into like a routine. The first probably 6 weeks were actually some of the most testing, although we kind of didn't realize it at the time. So we had over 250 locks on the once we got to France. We had over 250 locks between before we reached the Black Sea, and for the first 20 or so of those, we were having to portage them. So we were having to go around the lock. We weren't allowed to go through it. And this meant that we would get to the lock and we would have to empty all of our bags out of the kayak. And we had probably about 80 kilos, if not more, of equipment and food and water, camping stuff, all of that. We had it all in our kayak, but we would have to take it all out, get all the bags up onto the bank. We'd then be able to pull our kayak out of the water. But Benji, our kayak, weighs like 40 kilos and he's 6.7 meters long. And he's also fiberglass, so we had to be really careful not to damage him or snap him. Once everything was up on the bank, we'd be able to put Benji onto a set of wheels, put all the bags back in, and then we would start walking around the lock. But we sometimes would have to walk up to like 4 or 5 kilometers because we were paddling on quite a lot of industrial canals at this stage and industrial rivers. So the locks were set up for barges, proper industrial shipping barges that are like 80 meters long. So that whole process of having to get around the locks was really brutal, and we had really hot weather pretty much from our first week in France. It was boiling, so we were doing this in like 30 plus degree heat, and it was exhausting. We were having to do it like middle of the day sometimes as well. We were having to go around like 4, 5, 6 locks a day sometimes, and each time it can take like a couple of hours. It's a really annoying process, and we also we had really bad luck with the wheels that we were using. We'd done a lot of research into which would be the best little set of wheels to use to put the kayak on. And we'd got some that were specifically designed for double kayaks and bags. So in theory, they could take the weight. But I think it was in the first month, those wheels collapsed on us and kind of left us fairly stranded. And we'd actually met this lovely couple. This was on the sort of French-Belgian border. We met this couple who'd let us camp in their garden. They happened to be kayakers, and they had a spare set of wheels, and they were about an hour away. So they drove their spare set of wheels to us, and took our broken wheels away. And the next day, those wheels got stolen. We were in a campsite in Belgium, and we woke up and the wheels had gone from outside the tent. It was kind of our own fault for leaving them visible. But we were in a nice family campsite. And actually in the whole trip, they were the only things that did get stolen, which is kind of ironic because we did a lot of much more dodgy camping than that. But yes, we had really bad luck with wheels. We ended up getting through about 4 or 5 sets in the end. And each time it would delay us for a couple of days. And it was really frustrating. And the scenery at that stage was not so great. The thing about canals is the water level is normally a good 4 to 6 feet below the bank level. So we could never see what was going on around us. Everything kind of looked the same. It was pretty polluted. The water was gross. There was like dead fish, dead rats floating past all the time, massive cargo ships passing, cargo barges. So we to kind of help us through it, we were having quite big lions. We had quite a leisurely lifestyle. We weren't really getting up until about 10 in the morning because we just didn't really want that many hours out on the river or on the canal. So we would then paddle through until sort of 7 or 8 in the evening, because we then realised that we did actually have to still cover the distance. Somehow it was what it was. We kind of just cracked on with it. We knew that it was going to be tough. We knew that we were going to have loads and loads of locks, and that was going to be a challenge. and we knew that it wasn't going to be one of the most beautiful sections, and that camping was going to be kind of hard when you're trying to camp next to a canal. So we just dealt with it really each day. I think that's one of the things that Kate and I are quite good at, is just accepting the situation and doing our best to sort of make light of it, which we do very, very well.
Was camping your main form of accommodation, and how did that work? Did you know where you wanted to get to at the end of each day? Did you have like a specific stopping point, or is it more a case of just going with the flow, going with the river, seeing how things went?
So it varied. So we did camp for the majority of it. The only times we weren't really camping would be maybe like once a week or every 2 weeks. We'd stop off in a key city and have a day off, and for that we would stay in a hotel for 2 nights. The rest of the time we were camping, and definitely the majority of that camping was wild camping. That was a bit more challenging in France and Belgium. We tried to find campsites along the route, and I had like a list, a document on my phone of all of the distances between locks and cities and campsites, and all of the information that we would need. We had quite useful maps as well, but we would have like a rough idea of where we wanted to finish. So each evening I would get out my phone and I'd be on Google Earth flicking through and sort of work out the minimum distance that we would need to cover the next day. And then I would start looking on Google at whether there would be appropriate places to be camping. So if we were aiming to do 30 kilometers and I worked that out and I saw that there was a massive city that would take up like 20 kilometers or 10 kilometers of the canal, then we'd have to start looking either before or after the city and then sort of plan our day accordingly. But then we could arrive at the place we thought we could camp and discover that there was actually like a 7-foot barbed wire fence stopping us from getting to anywhere accessible. So the first couple of months camping was really, really hard, and we definitely camped in some places that I never want to go back to. But we made it work. We were sharing a tent for the majority of that as well, because there just wasn't room to put 2 tents up. It was very much the ultimate stealth camping, with the exception of having a almost 7-meter bright orange kayak next to us. But we were sort of having to like scramble through bushes to try and find a little clearing in these little woods and things like that. Always quite close to factories and big industrial areas. It wasn't that nice. But once we got through to Germany, and even actually the later part in France, as we approached Strasbourg, things got a lot easier. But Germany onwards, wild camping became absolutely wonderful. And we were able to sort of camp on beaches, particularly on the Danube actually, because the water level was very low. We had 2,000 kilometers on the Danube, but yeah, the water level was very low, so there were always really huge sandy beaches at the side of the river. And we were having sort of fires in the evenings, swimming. Oh, it was a lovely life.
What was the biggest challenge that you faced overall, looking back now? I mean, I know you've mentioned the locks, but was there any other challenges or anything else that happened, whether that was the physical aspect, the mental aspect, something you look back on and think, that was really tough?
Yeah, so when we reached the Danube at the beginning of August, we discovered that because of how hot and dry it had been, the river was low and it was flowing much slower than we expected. In our mind, we kind of thought once we got to the Danube, we would be doing like 70, 75 kilometers a day easily. So we kind of forecast our finish date and sort of had a rough plan for the final 2,000 kilometers based on this quite big daily average. And we very quickly discovered that was not going to go quite to plan. We were only really doing more like 40 to 50 kilometers a day. We had this realization that we were going to have to do something quite drastic if we wanted to make it to the Black Sea. So this was in Germany. We started setting our alarms for 5 a.m. We were getting up in the dark. We would be having our breakfast while the sun was rising, which we literally could watch every single day from our tents. We would then get on the river as soon as the sun was up, and we would kayak for sort of at least 12 hours a day. We'd only really stop in the evening when the sun started to set and it started to get dark, because we couldn't paddle in the dark. So as soon as the sun was kind of getting low in the sky, we'd start keeping an eye out for good places to camp. We became really strict with our breaks as well, like our snack and lunch breaks. And we had to have done like 40 kilometers before we even stopped for lunch, things like that. We were much more regimented, which actually didn't take away from the enjoyment of it at all, because those mornings when we were the only people on the river and everything was completely still and quiet, sometimes the sun was still rising, or the sun would literally pop over the horizon as we were paddling along. They became some of the best moments of the whole thing. And we started having a morning song. We'd put on like a nice upbeat song first thing in the morning, actually sometimes classical music as well, both being classical musicians. And so we made quite a big change to our daily routine, which meant that we were able to start covering up to 75 kilometers a day. And we had a really, really good run of this through quite a few countries, actually. So Germany, Austria, Slovakia, I'm definitely going to not get these in the right order. But yeah, through quite a few countries, made really, really good progress. In like just over 2 weeks, we passed through 5 countries and 4 capital cities. And then we reached Serbia, and I got really ill in Serbia on my birthday, woke up not in a good way. And we ended up having to spend about a week in Belgrade with me confined to a bed. I ended up on a drip as well at one stage. And that obviously set us back by quite a lot. So all of that time that we'd made up for, we then lost. And we kept going as soon as I kind of started to show signs of improvement, probably sooner than we should have done, but we were both getting really impatient. That was like the longest that we'd had to sit still and the longest we've been inside for months. So we were really, really fed up and just wanted to keep on going. But obviously, because I was still sort of regaining strength and recovering, we were only doing shorter days, kind of 30, 40 kilometers. And then we got some really bad weather. The only really bad weather that we had, actually, so there were quite a few days of storms, lots of lightning, very, very close to where we were. So that's pretty much the only weather that we really can't be on the river in. But also then ridiculous headwinds on top of that were slowing us down so much. We were sometimes doing like 1 or 2 kilometers an hour while just paddling so hard. And again, our progress just took such a hit. So we were doing like 20 kilometers. Some days we weren't even covering any distance. And that was really frustrating, really demoralizing. We were so close to the end. And actually the direct implication of that was that we weren't going to be able to paddle the whole way to the Black Sea. We had to commit to an end date. Kate had to get back to England to start university, and I had also agreed to go and do some work for a weekend, the same weekend actually. So we knew that we had to be back in England for that date. And also our families had to, they needed a date so they could book flights to come out of Greece at the Black Sea. Because of all this bad weather and me being ill and all of that stuff, we had to accept that we weren't going to paddle the full distance. And that was definitely the worst moment, realizing that no matter what we did, we simply couldn't do it. So in the end, my dad, bless him, he was already driving out to the Black Sea so that we could drive back to England with the kayak on the car. This is how dedicated we are to Benji, our kayak. He was absolutely coming home with us. But we got him to come out a couple of days early, and we arranged to meet him somewhere in Romania. And we basically said that we would paddle as far as we could until we reached him, or we sort of crossed paths. And he would then drive us, cut out a little bit, and we would paddle the last 2 days on the Danube Delta. We'd left it timing wise, so we knew that unless the weather was absolutely horrendous, we would be able to do those last 2 days of paddling. So we cut out a couple 100 kilometers of the Danube, which absolutely broke our hearts. And we, for a while, felt like we had failed because we hadn't paddled all of it. We made our peace with it. It was what it was. We couldn't change it. And we knew that we had tried our hardest, and we paddled so hard. And once the weather sorted itself out again, we actually had some really, really lovely times. We were able to start getting up to 70 kilometers a day again, had some of the best camping after that as well. And some really happy memories from that last section, even though it was not going to plan at all. It's still slightly frustrating to us both now. People have sort of said, oh, why don't you go back to Romania and do those couple 100 kilometers? And we're like, meh. like, we don't really need to. For us, we finished it, and it may not have gone to plan, but we still kayaked like over 4,000 kilometers. So we don't really feel like we failed anymore, thankfully.
Good. What was the biggest learning for you from going through this and completing this challenge, kayaking over 4,000 kilometers through 11 countries? Looking back now, what do you think you learned from that experience?
I'm still trying to work this out, actually. It's quite interesting because it wasn't the same as being on a solo adventure. I feel like some of the trips that I've done before, I have felt like there have been much bigger self-developments almost. Whereas I think with this one, because I was sharing it with another person, there wasn't quite so much of a, yeah, it's quite hard to like phrase it or explain it. There wasn't so much like a personal journey. So I think going into it, one thing that I was very curious about was how I would cope doing something with another person, and how I would deal with spending that much time with just one other person, because we were literally sitting like 2 feet apart. When we weren't sharing a tent, our tents were like right next to each other always. We had to be able to like hear each other in the night. We were really very, very inseparable, and so I wasn't sure whether like how I would deal with that. And I think one of the things that I learned was that actually I enjoy having that other person around and that companionship. And I can only say that knowing how lucky I was with Kate. We didn't have your sort of normal expedition experience. We'd be warned quite a lot before we went about the risk of us having an argument or big enough falling out that we would just never want to talk to each other again. And I've heard plenty of horror stories of adventures and expeditions that have been a disaster, either, you know, come to an end, an early end, or just people have hated it because of the people that they've gone with. Not anything personal against other people, but just the team dynamic not working out. And there being just two of us. If that dynamic had fallen apart at any stage, that would have been like really, really challenging. So Kate and I had discussed how to deal with this. We talked about like when arguments were most likely to arise and how we should respond to the other person. We had agreed on the importance of being able to move on straight away and just, you know, accept that we'd had an argument and just get over it and move on. But actually, we never had to put those plans into practice because we never had an argument. I think there were only 2 occasions that I can remember where we even had different opinions on how to handle something. And in the end, we found a compromise on one of them. And in the end, we actually just ended up agreeing on how to do it, kind of like talked ourselves around in circles and then realized that we were saying the same thing. So we every single day, it was a genuine pleasure and enjoyment to be around the other person. And though there were days where we were both quiet and just didn't really want to talk, we knew that it was never personal. It wasn't that Kate didn't want to talk to me or that I'd done anything. It was just that Kate didn't want to talk, and Kate knew the same about me. Although we sometimes like we had to just double check. We're like, hey pal, I haven't done anything, have I? Kate be like, no, I'm just quiet day. And we're just like, cool, yeah, all right, should put some music on. And like just listen to some music instead, and just, yeah. But then by evening, by the time we're having dinner, it'd be like just laughter all over the place, and we'd be watching Gilmore Girls on the iPad in the tent, drinking our hot chocolate without fail.
Did you suffer from any adventure blues after you came back?
Coming back, I was really, really busy straight away. I had like loads of writing had blogs to write for sponsors and grants, and I had loads of like photos to edit, I had writing stuff to sort out, speaking stuff. Like straight away, I was on the go, and it was all also to do with kayaking, so I didn't kind of have to move on from it straight away, because sometimes like you come back from a big trip and if you're going straight back into work, then you have to move on from the experience that you just had. And luckily I didn't have that, so it kind of just flowed over and continued. And it was only a couple of months after I got back where there was like a slight lull in things. I think it was probably towards the end of November. I had like that moment where I realized that I'd been feeling low for a couple of weeks, and I was like, oh my god, this is post-expedition blues. It took ages for me to realize it, but like I'd lost that purpose, and because everything else was a little bit quiet, I'd lost the kind of the purpose of writing and getting stuff planned in as well. So when I realized that, I was like, okay, I'm going to go on a little adventure. I went off on an adventure through Scotland. I saw one of my best friends. We went kayaking as well, actually, kind of unintentionally. And that kind of sorted it out. And I came back feeling like positive, determined, renewed again, and with kind of a clear purpose about what I wanted to do over the next couple of months. That said, of course, Kate and I both still miss it massively. There are moments like if I'm flicking through photos and actually preparing for talks as well, if I'm looking for a particular photo, I end up like spending 3 hours just going through all the photos and watching the videos that I've got, the little clips of us just giggling basically. And it just, it can get quite sad and emotional that life is over for us, because it was a fantastic life. We had so much fun regardless of what was happening. It was amazing fun. So we do miss it. But luckily, Kate is literally down the road from me. She's at Oxford Uni, so she stayed close. And so we get to see each other plenty, which helps keep us both sane and made that transition a bit easier, helps with the blues.
And you also raised a huge amount of money for charity. Do you just want to share how much you raised and the charity?
So far, our Virgin Money giving page is actually still open, I believe. We've managed to raise about £57,000 or £58,000, which was way more than we thought, for Pancreatic Cancer Action, in memory of Kate's dad, David. When we kind of set out on this whole journey in November 2017, we thought we would aim for £20,000, and we thought that was pretty ambitious. But I think we actually passed £20,000 before we even started the expedition. So we are just so blown away by the amount of generosity, the people who donated, friends, family, strangers, people who just kind of came across it online, but also the people that we met along the way who would ask what we were doing and we would kind of explain and then mention that we were fundraising, and they would literally reach into their pocket and get out some euros for us. Yeah, it's absolutely incredible the amount of people who have supported us by donating and making that happen.
What's next for you, Anna? What future adventures have you got planned? Anything in the pipeline?
Well, I'm off to Africa actually for the whole of March. It's not my usual sort of adventure. It is definitely still adventure. My best friend from school and I are doing a road trip through South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe and Mozambique. This friend actually runs a marine conservation organisation in Mozambique, and I've been saying for years that I'll go and visit her, and finally making that happen. We're just taking a slight detour through 3 other countries before we actually get to where she lives. So doing that throughout March. And then my current plan, although it's changed about 3 times in the last couple of weeks. So my current plan is at the beginning of the summer to travel back up to Arctic Scandinavia and spend about 3 months trekking. It's about 500 or 600 miles through Finland, Sweden and Norway, above the Arctic Circle by myself.
Oh, fantastic. That sounds incredible. And Anna, where's the best place for people to find more information about you and your adventures, or if they want to find more information about, kayaking the continent?
So for me, my website is annablackwell.co.uk. I'm on Instagram as Anna Blackwell, Facebook as Anna Blackwell-adventurer, and Twitter is _Anna Blackwell. For kayaking, our website is kayakingthecontinent.com, and we've got loads of photos and blogs and more backstory and things like that on there. That's all fully dedicated to that, kayakingthecontinent.com.
Fantastic. Anna, massive congratulations again to you and Kate for completing such an incredible challenge, and best of luck with all of your future challenges. Cannot wait to keep updated, cannot wait to follow along with the journey. I know it's going to be absolutely inspiring, and it's been a pleasure having you back on the Tough Girl podcast to share more of your story.
Oh, thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed the episode with Anna Blackwell. All of the information and everything that we've talked about can be found at the show notes, which is at toughgirlchallenges.com. And on the website, you can find all the links to my social media, the other interviews that we've done with other women, links to my books, more information about me and my different challenges that I've completed, from Marathon des Sables to through hiking the Appalachian Trail and cycling the Pacific Coast Highway and down to Cabo in Mexico. So Tough Girl Extra, it is like an added bonus episode. I'm trying to do more of them, partly because I really want to put more content out there. There's so many incredible women who are just smashing it on so many levels, and I just want to make sure that their stories do get heard. So we've got a few Tough Girl Extra episodes coming out. We've got Jenny Tuff coming on. We're going to be speaking to Bex Band and Anna McNuff. So we've got a few exciting episodes coming up over the next couple of months, so make sure you do subscribe so you don't miss out. Tough Girl Extra episodes come out on a Thursday at 7 a.m. UK time. Normal episodes come out on a Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time. Now, I have mentioned Patreon before, but Patreon is how I fund the running costs of the podcast. It does cost money to put podcasts out on a regular basis. It does cost money to host the website, and it's also my time involved, from promoting, from finding guests, to doing the research, to the editing. It's a very, very time-consuming job. I am a one-woman show, and actually I do really, really appreciate all of your financial support. If you want to help me increase the amount of female role models in this space, increase the amount of female adventurers, runners, swimmers, athletes, challengers, women who are out there absolutely smashing it, then please do consider becoming a Patreon. $2 a month would make such a big difference to me. $5 a month would make an incredible difference. So please think about giving it back, paying it forward. If you go to Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast, you can see all of the different levels that you can subscribe at. Even if you can only afford $1 a month, it would make such an incredible difference, because if I had 2,000 individuals sponsoring me at $1 a month, $2,000 a month is a complete and utter game changer. It really would help me to elevate the Tough Girl podcast and to take it to the next level. Thank you to all my incredible patrons. There's over 230 of you now supporting. I'd love to get that number up to 250. So please pay it forward, get involved, step up, take action, and be part of this mission. Help me to increase the amount of female role models out there. So please do go check out patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. I'll be back with you next Tuesday for another incredible episode. Have an awesome day wherever you are. Lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.